Hello and welcome to another Millennial Minute. I'm your host, Julia Sun. Today's question, should social media platforms fact-check posts? You've already heard from our guests, Helen Lee Bouygues, president of the Reboot Foundation, and Erin Elmore from Turning Point USA. Welcome to the show, ladies. Now, platforms claim that they label posts to stop misinformation. Helen, is it working?
Unfortunately, there are so many posts that they can't actually fact check everything. So it's not very pragmatic to expect the social media to actually be able to fact check everything. However, I do think there is a certain amount of responsibility for social media platforms to at least check the sources and indeed avoid trying to misguide people from assuming that all blogs are effectively news sources.
Yeah. See, Erin, in this country at least, we have something called the First Amendment. Do you think we have a right to free speech even on these privately owned internet platforms?
Well, legally speaking, that's not exactly how free speech works. However, we're talking here about fact checking. All it is a means of censoring conservative thought. If it were applied evenly, I think people would feel slightly differently, but everyone knows, and it's very clear to see, that conservative thought and conservative ideas are treated completely differently than those of liberals. So this is more a means of content control and censorship than really worrying about facts. It's just under the guise of caring about facts, when the fact is that's not what they care about.
Let's say hypothetically, if Silicon Valley is a more diverse place with more conservative voices, Helen, is it even possible to stop what's called misinformation?
Well, before I answer your question, I just want to make sure that there isn't some myths or untruths because there isn't enough research done that actually platforms are biased against conservative ideas. In fact, some of the more recent studies show actually the contrary of that. Crowd tangle.
I think CNN did those studies.
Say that again?
I think CNN must have done those studies.
No, actually, both professors at the University of Virginia. Now, you may actually state that professors at all universities are totally liberals and left wing, but let's put that aside because I think that's some of the challenges in our society today where people need to do a little bit more critical thinking in terms of trying to be more open minded about understanding both points of view. But going back to the point about is indeed uh, actual social media platforms more left biased and do not post and is against conservative ideas. If there isn't actually a fact base that's been proven to demonstrate that it is one way or the other. And in fact, if you actually look at social media and especially things like Section 230, even the Democrats actually would like to have more monitoring of the situation, some changes towards Section 230.
Erin, I would think you disagree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is at least, if nothing else, severe anecdotal evidence of bias against conservatives. Or if you just look at lawsuits, you don't see liberals suing because their posts have been taken down, censored, monitored. Is it because liberals are more honest? Well, we all know that's not true. So, I mean, Candace Owens, for example, just basically had her lawyers fire off a letter to the social media platforms, and she won because it was true that they were censoring her content, saying she wasn't factual. So, if nothing else, there's anecdotal evidence of this. And the studies that we speak of, universities, we all know that they're a bastion of liberal thought. But having said that, 230, we're speaking about the Communications Decency Act, shouldn't even apply to these social media platforms anymore because what they say is, listen, if you just farm out all information, you're protected. But the problem is they're not just throwing any information out. They're putting things up here and putting things down here and saying this is fake and this is real. When you start to do that, you don't deserve the protection of 230 under the Communications Decency Act.
Helen, what do you think?
I mean, there's one thing I do agree with Erin. I do think that the social media platforms do have a responsibility to be more transparent about what they actually what they fact check, what their processes, because I think some of the misconceptions from people like Erin come from the fact that there is not enough transparency from these social media sites. So there is a dimension in terms of um, needing to be more transparent, being clearer about their algorithm as well. One of the challenges of social media that does create, obviously, even potentially more fake news. The Reboot Foundation, we did a study and reviewed what percentage of the American population actually first gathers their news from social media, and what percentage of the US population, in terms of adults, are susceptible to fake news. And our studies have demonstrated that people who are heavy users of social media are actually more susceptible to fake news. That's regardless of political tendency, age, income, race, or any matters. So I think what that actually drives at is the algorithm of these social media websites in terms of how they generate money is actually to channel larger emotions, because that's what has people clicking through and staying online further. So I think, practically speaking, the question that we need to really answer is not necessarily whether or not social media can or cannot even fact check, because when you have over 1,000 tweets per minute, is that even practically doable? But I think the bigger question that we need to really ask ourselves is what is creating this large misconception, as well as suspect about what's being posted in social media. So it comes back down to transparency.
All right, ladies, we're out of time. I can tell you as a millennial, I definitely get all my news from social media these days. Anyway, thank you both for being here. And thank you for watching Millennial Minute. I'm Julia Sun, and I'll see you back here next week.